For some reason, people seem to think they're cool for slagging off Boss pedals as if they're above Boss. So I wanted to give my little take on what I think about Boss pedals. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, I was in a band that did 5 UK tours. We did around 400 gigs. We released 2 albums and 2 EPs. And this was my pedal board. Boss tuner, Boss Metal Zone, and Boss noise suppressor. That was it. No effects, no delay, no chorus, no reverb, just those pedals going into a Marshall JCM 800 head. So out of those gigs, 400 odd gigs, 5 tours, these are the actual same pedals that I used. I must have had these since 1995. They still work perfectly. Every single gig that I played, they worked perfectly. Never a problem with any of them. They're built like tanks. Over those 5 tours, 400 gigs, 2 albums, 2 EPs, guess how many people came up to me at the end of a show and said, "Your tone sucked"? 0. Guess how many people listened to our albums and said, "We hated your sound"? 0. Guess how many people came up to us and said, "I can't believe you're using Boss pedals"? 0. Guess how many people came up to us and said, "Didn't you know Boss pedals suck your tone"? 0. Guess how many people came up to us and said, "Didn't you know Boss pedals are not true bypass"? 0. So the Boss pedals were okay then. Now when I play live now, if I use Boss pedals, nobody notices. Nobody says, "Oh, you would have been really good if you hadn't used a Boss, or if you'd have used some other boutique make instead." When we were recording our albums and EPs, guess how many of the producers came up to us and said, "I really like your songs, boys, but you're using Boss pedals, what are you doing?" 0. Another thing that I find quite interesting is that people for years have been saying true bypass is better, Boss aren't true bypass, they've got a buffer in them. Guess what everybody is buying now to put at the front of their pedal board chain? A buffer. So all of a sudden, Boss, the buffer in them is a good thing, whereas for the last 5 to 10 years it was a bad thing, so I find that quite funny. When you're playing a music venue, there are so many different things that can affect your tone. So the venue itself, the acoustics, how many people are in the room, whether or not you're going through the PA. Because if you're going through the PA, the soundman's miking it up, how he mics it up will affect your tone. How he then puts that through front of house and affects the EQ in front of house will affect your tone. So you could be using a Metal Zone, or you could be using a £250 boutique pedal, but the sound that you're going to get is still going to be different at every gig. People that slag off the Metal Zone obviously haven't spent enough time trying to dial it in to find a good tone, because there are tons of good sounds you can get out of that pedal through a decent tube amp. So now I've done my little rant about Boss pedals, let's think about some of the players that have used or still use Boss pedals. Slash, Andy Timmons, Dave Gilmour, Joe Bonamassa, Paul Gilbert, Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead, John Mayer. I don't know if you've heard of any of those guys, so they can't be that bad.